Hey, welcome to Steve McGrath's Basscraft. Yeah, so this is it, the final episode of the year, the Christmas episode. I just want to say before we get started with the episode, it is live this one, so I was at Owen's house, so it'll be a little bit different to other ones. But before we start, just want to say thanks to everyone who's supported me so far, especially everyone who bought the t-shirt, because that's after paying off some of the stuff I invested to get the podcast started, the mics and whatever other things I needed, lights, all that jazz. So thanks a lot for that, and just for subscribing and sending me messages and just being engaged in the whole thing. That's been awesome. I hope in the new year to maybe do a kind of a ones to watch series, but I actually blitzed it the last week and recorded a bunch of episodes, so I'll be getting them out before I start doing this ones to watch thing. But that's good because it gives you time to send me a message and tell me what bass players you think we should have on. Obviously don't just nominate the lad in your band, just nominate a bass player you think is going to do good things in 2021, right? And yeah, I just want to say have a great Christmas and a great new year. I know it's a strange one, but like, what can you do? We're all in the same boat. Myself, I'm not really going to spend much time out here in the shed. I'm just going to chill out in the house and light the fire and just enjoy that side of things. I might invest. I think I always kind of invest in one or two courses a year. I don't mind spending money on things like that. So I did buy the Gary Willis course a few years ago, the SBL course that he did with them, and yeah, it was worth the money. I learned a lot from it. It was really good. But just you can any of these courses, they actually offer your money back if you don't like them. So it's worth a punt on one of them, just get you kickstart your learning in January. This year I don't think I'm going to pay for like a base course. I'm going to do something to do with like producing in your workstation, trying to get a track finished, because at the moment I have loads of ideas but I can't finish them, and I'd love to be able to do that better, like produce a track. So I might do some project like that in the new year, and I'm sure that'll give me the kick up the arse to come back out into the shed and start working at it again. So yeah, this episode is with Eoghan O'Neill, and I recorded it in person in his house in Thurles, and I have to say thanks to Jev from the band, from my band, for coming up to help us as our assistant. He did a class job because there was like 3 cameras on the go and mics and bass TIs and all this stuff, and I never could have done it without him. So thanks a lot for that, Jev, and link down below to his profiles. He's busy educating and doing other projects as well. So yeah, we had Eoghan came on, and you must be familiar with Eoghan. He's one of the definitely a legend of the Irish bass scene. He's played with Moving Hearts, he's toured in Riverdance with Celtic Women, and of course he did 5 albums with Chris Rea over in his career, and he even played bass on Driving Home for Christmas, so that kind of ties in with the Christmas episode. So we covered a lot in this, and it was great crack because he had a bunch of basses out, and near the end he kind of told me that he has loads more basses in the house that I didn't get to see, so we might have to do a follow-up. We're just looking at the basses. So don't forget to subscribe on your podcast app and of course on YouTube, because that really helps me out, because the more engagement the podcast is getting, the more it gets pushed in front of other people who are interested in this bass related stuff. So yeah, anyway, sure, let's just jump in with Eoghan, and I hope you really enjoy the episode, and I'll talk to you soon. Hey, so welcome to Steve McGrath's Basscraft. I'm delighted to do this Christmas episode with Eoghan O'Neill.
Hi there. How's it going?
Great. And we were chatting about this bass before we came on here. I don't know the brand at all. What is it? MTD?
MTD. Yeah, it's Michael Tobias Design. It stands for. He's a bass maker. He has his as he calls it himself, his shop, which is just a small workshop in upstate New York near Woodstock, and he goes back quite a long way. He originally made his own basses under his own name, Tobias Basses, and that was back in the 80s and maybe the late 70s even. And a lot of funk players used them. And so he was living on the West Coast, and he sold his company to Gibson and couldn't make guitars for a year or whatever the deal was. And so he moved to the East Coast and set up in Kingston. And he started making these. I bought one in a shop in New York called Rudy's, where everything was very expensive, and I loved it. And we made contact. I was playing with Riverdance at the time, and we made contact, and I now have 6 or 7 of them. And
You know him personally now, anyway.
yeah, but everyone that uses his basses kind of knows him personally, because he's on towards retiring now, and his son David is making most of the basses. But there's only 2 of them, and I can't remember the third guy in the workshop. And most stuff is made by hand, and that's why they're also different. This particular one was originally made for me as a fretless, and I asked him to make me a bass that had no rare woods in it. This is what he came up with.
It looks like it has some rare woods put into it. But
yeah, well,
must have sourced them somewhere.
it's okay, but the fretless neck. So they're absolutely identical. I could just take one off, put the other on. Mind you, you'd need these, as the ladies in the traditional circle call them, the twirly things. You'd need the twirly things on to get it working. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't think there's another of them. I think there's only one that has 2 necks.
Yeah.
However, I'd like them.
What drew you to his basses? Is it just the feel of them?
It's a long story. Well, it's not. I've been playing Music Man basses all my life. There's one there to your right, which I don't know whether you can see.
It's the most well-worn in Music Man I've
ever seen. I bought that in 1978, and most of my work has been played on that instrument, and yeah, it's shown the signs of it. So I got a 20th anniversary model of that, which was lighter and very nice. I went to New York. I was playing Riverdance again. We went to Los Angeles, and some guy from Music Man came into the show and said, "Oh, you're playing the 20th anniversary Music Man." I said, "Yeah, I love it." I said, "Is there any chance that you'd make me a 5-string version of this?" And he said, "Oh, I'm sure we would. Why don't you come up to the factory?" So I went up to San Luis Obispo, where Music Man were, and when I arrived there, I discovered that the man who'd been at the Riverdance show was actually a senior volunteer, and they were in there helping with the making of plectrums. So he said, "Oh, I'll just put you in touch with our artist representative, and he'll talk to you, and I'm sure there'll be no problem." There was absolutely no chance. "Oh no, we don't make 5-string versions of that. No, we just put trees into a machine and the basses come out the other end," which is the way it had become at that stage, and it was a pity. So I kind of fell out with them, and I got in touch with Michael, and he made me that one there, which I asked him to make me something that sounded like a big Fender jazz bass, which it does. And I played that for a long time, and that's about it. I've been playing them since.
You're unusual that most players, session players I see, play a P bass, but you're playing a lot of active basses.
Yeah, well, I don't know most session players. It seems that the Fender basses, I never really played Fender basses. I had a few. I had originally a jazz bass was the first proper bass that I had, and it was like a tennis racket, unfortunately. So eventually I got rid of it, and I bought a Rickenbacker, which wasn't like a tennis racket, but it sounded like one. And after that, I eventually bought the first That Music Man, and it suddenly, that was it, because they were the first kind of real active bass. So they were the first thing that you could actually really wind up the treble and the bass on, and they were just different at the time.
Back in the day, it must have been a bit of revelation how loud they are compared
huge.
to Fender.
But they still, I mean, it still holds its own with any other active bass. And there's only a tiny, the preamp in it is only the size of my thumbnail, but it's whatever way it is, those old ones, they really are great.
Yeah, it must feel great to play anyway. It's well worn in at this stage. So.
Yeah, it does. If I take it out and play it, it feels great. But I mean, that's the trouble. Like you can't play all of them all the time.
No.
No matter how much you like them.
It's nice to have the collection though.
Well, it is, I suppose. Yeah, they all have stories attached to them,
Mm.
which is kind of, you end up finding it, it's very hard to try and decide you're going to sell them. I think I'll get rid of them. So, no, you take it out then and I can't sell that one really
Yeah,
just yet because it's
letting a
there's
child go or something.
yeah, well, you remember each one of them in some ways has, like, that one has more stories attached to it than any of
Mm.
the others, but each one of them has a story to tell.
They've seen a lot of shenanigans over the years
Yeah,
on these tours.
that one's seen a lot of action, that Music Man. Yeah, but not all of it great. But however, I mean, that's the way it is. We can maybe talk about some of those stories at
Yeah,
some stage.
but you're a tip man originally. I was under the information that you were from a dub, but you're a full on tip man.
I am, yeah, wearing the jersey and everything. No, it's I've never moved very far from where I am now, but I mean, when I was whatever 24, 25, I did I moved to Dublin because of what I was doing at the time, and kind of stayed there for a lot of years. And eventually I decided, look, I'll come back down, and I'm in this house since, and that's 16 years ago now.
Mm.
So it's yeah, I've always been a tip man.
And you formed Moving Hearts up in Dublin. That's when with the original. You're one of the original members.
Yeah, that was the kind of the second biggish thing that I was doing. There was a band before that called Staggerly, which was based in Kerry. It was a funk band,
Cool.
and I was in that around towards the late 70s, and I wasn't cool enough, so they dispensed with my services. So I went back home and I decided, okay, that's it now. I'm going to 78. It was because I just bought that bass, and I went home and said, right, I'm going to stay here now. We had a shop across near Cashel in Rose Green, and I said, okay, I'll just run the shop here and it'll be fine. I lasted about 6 months, and then I started playing the bass again.
Mm.
This is nice. And at that point, it changed from playing with the pick to playing with my fingers. I had always played with the pick up to then. So it was a bit of a learning thing for me, and I'm still trying to learn it. But uh, I was in the shop one day, and just out of the blue, I got a call from Christy Moore. Said Declan Sinnott was saying to me that you might be interested in joining a band that are playing with us in this idea we have for a band. And I had played a bit with Declan in Cork when I was in college there. And I said, yeah, sure. So I came up and played at a thing called the Mugs Gig, which was in the Bagot Inn. And the band slowly extended, and eventually, about 6 or 9 months later, became Moving Hearts. And that was the most exciting time, I think,
Mm.
that of like, and that's a long time ago. That's 1980, but it was very exciting at the time.
The sound is exciting. Like you're mixing a lot of genres in the band. Like
Yeah, it was new. It was certainly new to me, because I had been all my stuff that I had been interested in was American music, and mostly like soul music, funk music, not a whole lot of rock and roll and a bit of blues.
yeah,
But it was extraordinary, like the the introduction to Irish music, as in like trad tunes and stuff like that, it completely opened my eyes. It changed
mm.
my whole life, and the band it was just great fun, and it had massive energy because we were excited for several reasons. Really, we were excited because the music was great fun to play, and we were also excited because we felt we were saying important things at the time.
Yeah, the lyrics are great as
Yes,
well.
there was a lot of turmoil in both in the country and in the world at the time, and we felt we were commenting on this honestly,
Mm.
and that made it really special to play.
That's true. Especially, it wouldn't be that common. Like, well, fusion bands often don't have lyricists anyway, or So,
No,
and you had the music and you were putting out a message at the same time.
it was great because like the basic thing was that Christy had these songs. He had been, but Planksty was just winding up at the time, and the songs didn't suit Planksty. It wasn't that kind of music. So the idea was, it became what Moving Hearts is, but the songs were there, which made it all the easier for us in a way, because all we really did was interpret what Christy had already. And in some ways, we found it very hard to follow the first record, because it was, then we had to try and find new songs.
Yeah.
And
as a group,
rather than having, here are the songs, we're going to play these songs. And it actually became difficult.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. And we only made the 2 albums really until 1985, where we then came back together and did the instrumental album, which is called The Storm. And that one is kind of what we're still playing. We have we have Mick Handley sings with us sometimes as a guest, but the band is an instrumental band as such.
Yeah, I was watching you doing a song called McBrides on YouTube, and you were doing a bit of slap bass, which was pretty cool to see in a trad music.
Yeah, that was a simple. No, it was an easy enough part, but it's where it sits, I suppose, within the thing. But slap bass is like being something people say, oh yeah, you're good at that, and actually I'm not. I'm hopeless at it. But because the first time I heard slap bass, I didn't actually see the guy who was playing, so I didn't know how he did it. So I had to try and figure out, well, how did he do that? So I developed my own way of doing it, and actually it turned out that it's close enough to what the guys do.
Do you remember what player it was you heard first?
Yeah, I think it was a guy called Popwell. It was Crusaders. It was a Crusaders thing, and it was a one of this like. That was the basic figure of it, like, and it was just dead funky. But that was the way I figured out that it'd have to be done.
In fairness, you're doing the thumb up the way, which is the modern way of slapping.
Is it?
Yeah, because I learned with the thumb down, like
like this.
and it's actually, you can't slap as fast. You can't do a double thumb technique, so everyone is trying to learn with the thumb up.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great news. Like that.
Yeah, that's the modern way of doing it.
Yeah.
Because Lewis Johnson, you remember?
Yeah.
He was like thumb down and hit it really hard.
And Larry Graham.
Yeah. But everyone these days is doing Marcus Miller, thumb up.
That's
so you can do a bit of double thumbing.
That's right. Yeah.
So you were ahead of your time.
I don't know where my time is, but yeah, that's the way I heard it. And it was funny because I was playing it on Rickenbacker, and the rest of the gig I was playing with this Tiger Lee band, I was playing with a pick, except for this one track, which was called My Mama Told Me So, by a band called the Crusaders, and that was this guy.
Yeah,
who was the bass player. And this is the way I figured out how to do it. And I kind of got a reputation for it, which is definitely not deserved. So I stopped doing it, and I kind of losing the technique now. But
I like what you were doing. You were doing kind of a lot of percussive stuff as well in that McBride song. You were kind of hitting a lot of dead notes up along the neck, so as well as slapping, which was nice. Like,
that's just something that I do. It's like, it's kind of an idea, and this is crazy, but one of the ways I think about playing is that I try and create a groove on my own. I know it's impossible. It's like trying to come in on the one without any counting before. But it's just that you get a lot of stuff going on in between the beats, and you kind of end up like with the I don't know how I do it, but it's like, supposing you're doing a swing shuffle, and it's just, instead of being if you go and it's all this stuff and the racket that's going on in between, it gives it some sort of a thing. I don't know what it is. It means something to me, but it probably doesn't mean anything to anybody else.
But it's worked anyway. You got you plenty of gigs.
I got a few gigs, yeah.
And do you have any, I suppose, the area of playing bass in trad, you would be one of top people that does it. Like, so is there any different approaches to take when you're playing with those in that trad style on the bass? Like,
Well, I have to give up a lot of credit for what I do to Donald Lunny, because being Donald, okay, he claims that he didn't know anything about rhythm sections, but he does. And he pointed me in certain directions, which then I ran with. And it's one of the things is to try not to play too much. And you also have to be aware of the fact, especially if it's filling pipes or something in the band, that it's, if the tune is in D, it's D. So you just have to find your way around playing in the key. And usually the best thing, what I found nearly always works, is if you just play the big downbeat and then just leave the space for the percussion and stuff. You know, it always works. In that, I suppose you'll get away with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can be very fidgety and start getting involved in melody and stuff. But in a 13-piece band, just play the fundamental.
Yeah.
And, you know, the odd orchestral note here and there, you know, it works very nicely as well. You know, just put in something instead of playing, like if the thing is in D, might maybe in the B part of the tune, you might play an A against it or something. And it just gives a different color to it. But basically it's all very simple, and it's just maybe learn the rhythm of the tune and try and stay within it. You know, that's what all I've ever done.
Well, it works anyway. And you did for the ballads, you often get the fretless out. And
yeah, I a few little bits, not a lot. I used to play a lot more on fretless back in the days when I was playing with the Hearts, but it wasn't a Fender. It was an Ibanez Musician, which at the time was the bass that Sting used to play with the Police. And so I had a fretless one, which was terrific. It had a great sound, but it's gone the way of some other ones. It's I think it's now a fretted bass in Cork.
One that got away.
Yeah, it did. But most of the stuff I did and back then was played on that. And it just had a really hard, nosy kind of sound, and they were great. But I mean, I find the fretless is very expressive in some ways, but it's hard work.
Yeah. You kind of have to keep your chops going.
Yeah, you need to play it all the time. And I know I heard a story one time, I don't know whether it is true or not, but that's the great Pino Palladino, who was famous fretless player. Really, I think he's playing mostly fretted bass now, but I'm sure he could still turn a trick on the fretless. But he was somebody that was, I think, worked with them in one of the bands he was in. Might have been Paul Young, and when he was playing all that lovely high stuff on the fretless. And he said he just used to have his tuner on all the time. And he would
really,
he'd be keeping an eye on the tuner. But eventually, of course, he wasn't looking at the tuner. You know, it's just, that was the way he got his head around the fact that, but he knew the intonation perfectly.
Yeah, well, some of the sound comes from being slightly out of tune, or
moving to the note.
Yeah. I see a lot of people they do an exercise where they have a fretted bass and a looper, and they'll play a line, and then they'll plug in their fretted, and they want to double the lines.
Yeah,
to get the perfect intonation.
Yeah,
same thing.
I've done that. But, we didn't have a looper though. Well, apart from ourselves, but yeah, I've done. Yeah, two basses very nice together. Sometimes, if you play, usually I do it the other way around. I play on the fretted first, and then I overdub the fretless on it. And you don't use that much of the fretless, but it's there. It peeps out.
Yeah,
and I think the important thing, I don't know, is that you should always err on being slightly flat. You can be slightly flat on the bass and it won't be noticeable. But if you're sharp, you'll really hear it. You know?
They'll all be looking at you.
Again, to my ears, you know. But I'll always, on a fretless, I'll always slide up to the note rather than slide down. You know, and sliding down doesn't work anyway. You can't slide down. Can you slide down?
No.
Well, you can, I suppose. But however, yeah, that's the way I see it, and it's it may be right or it may be wrong.
And you have a 6-string as well. That's a bit of a beast of a thing.
That thing there, oh yeah, that's I bought that because of a bass player called Anthony Jackson,
Yeah,
who I thought was absolutely the bee's knees
he's a monster bass player.
and a monster man. And he used to play one of these, and I saw one in London, and I had to have it, so I bought it. That was sometime in the early 80s, middle 80s. It was made in 1981, I think, and I love it, but it's an awful handful. Like, it's very funky. Like, the sound of it's very funky. We might hear it later. I might play a little bit on it. I might play a little bit on it now, actually.
Yeah.
See, it's a slightly different tone to the other one.
What do you find more useful? Do you find the high C string more useful or the high B?
Well, the low B
Or the low B,
the low B would be what I play more. Like, the 5-string is the low B. The C, sometimes again, this is like a fretless. If you're going to play a 6-string, you have to play it all the time, because what happens if you panic? This becomes a G.
Oh yeah.
Suddenly you're playing everything at a 4th or up than you want to. But the thing about it is, it's very nice if you're thinking about, say, something that's a little bit expressive or something, you know.
It really sounds great, that bass.
But it's kind of funky as well. It's like, if you want to,
it's very clear.
It is, yeah. It's an extraordinary yoke, but it's just like, look at my hands are not that big, but I mean, I can hardly reach across the neck. But the thing is, once I play it, I kind of get used to it. But the danger, if you're trying to play in a normal position, which you'd be there, like you should try and play on the four middle strings, which means it's a bass.
Yeah.
You know, like. And then you've got the top one. If you want to, you know,
top one is nearly as thin as a guitar string.
It is. Well, I think it's a 28 that's on the top of that, which is it's light enough. What happens when you're trying to play in the middle, and the middle 4 strings, that the top one sometimes gets in the way.
All right.
Because, like, I don't know, you're kind of used to going across the middle 4, and whereas on a 5-string bass, your top string is still the G, so it's going to feel natural, and then you've got the extra notes at the bottom.
Yeah.
But on this, the top string is a C, so it sometimes becomes a problem.
You have 2 things.
It gets in your way, and it makes muting a lot more difficult as well, because you have to think about stopping the B going, which is one of the troublesome things about playing like big basses.
Yeah, well, it's hard to even find a 5-string or a 6-string that has a good sounding B string.
Yeah,
that doesn't ring true a lot of the time.
These ones I like, but the thing about them is, and this one actually is very pure the whole way up.
It's not floppy sounding, the low B.
No, it's not. And it's, if you can, but you see that I think the problem with them on all of these, that I call them big basses, is that once you go above the position that's the E, once you go up higher, it's to do with, I think, with the size of the string. The note becomes a bit floppier. You know, it doesn't kind of have, it won't have the same punch as it has down there. Like it, I don't This is starting to become a bit Spinal Tap.
Do you still practice like as much as you used to, like transcribe songs and stuff? On?
No, I practice. Yeah, it's funnily I come in here some days and I play a lot. I don't learn songs as such. I don't really transcribe music as such, but I love when someone sends me something like a song maybe that I'm going to play, and I'll spend ages just figuring out what I think is nice for this. But when I was like, I suppose younger, my practice routine was I didn't really do scales or exercises or stuff like that, which of course I should have done and wish now that I had. But what I actually did was I played along with records. And the thing I tried to do, not necessarily learn what the bass player was playing, but learn the feel. Like if the record had a particularly great feel, I'd play along with it. I mightn't play the part that the guy was playing. It would be an approximation of it. But the main thing I was trying to learn was why it felt so good, and that was my routine, hours and hours.
Brilliant.
Every day, mostly old Motown records and stuff like
on
that.
Actual vinyl records spinning around.
Some vinyl records are in the early days of the Walkman, just stuff, but just play away, and it was great.
Yeah, that's what was the foundation of your playing that period.
Yeah, the fact is that I didn't know anything. I had no kind of formal music education, which I'm a thing I regret. But the thing about it is that I just played along with these records I liked, and I just tried to learn, like, why does this feel so good? And eventually some of it has to rub off on you, if you spend hours and hours when you're supposed to be at lectures. My poor mother and father, rest them both. I was in college in Cork, studying very hard English and archaeology. I already knew English. I was able to speak. And archaeology, I'm old now, so that's okay too. But I didn't really do a whole lot of it, but I played the bass a lot.
That's good.
Well, I don't know whether it was
probably
or not.
The best thing to do.
It could have been. Maybe it's probably more useful than a degree in English and archaeology.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not no comment.
But however, no, that's just what happened. It was. I went from there to Staggerlee, absolutely convinced. I didn't there wasn't any question. I knew I was the best bass player in the world at that point. I didn't think it.
Brilliant.
Nobody had told me, but I just knew it. And I was 19. And the whole world was opening up.
It's very Jacko of you. Because reading Jacko's book, he tells everyone I'm the best in the world.
Well, he probably was.
He had you in Ireland saying you were the best in the world.
Yeah, well, I pared that down after a little while, and then I decided I was the best in Europe, because there was no kind of, you hear any great German bass players, and suddenly I got my eyes opened when I went to Europe, and it was suddenly I was wondering, it's like Ringo Starr. Like John Lennon once described him as, he said, somebody asked the question, is Ringo Starr the best drummer in the world? John Lennon's answer was, hey, he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles.
We have Jev as our assistant here today. He actually is a fan of Ringo's drumming.
So am I. So am I. Yeah, absolutely. There's nobody else can do those fills.
No, they're really weird. Left-handed drummer.
Playing right-handed.
Yeah, that's why they're back. Is it backwards?
Oh, the toms are all screwy. Yeah. Okay, right. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Well, you were the musical director of Riverdance, though. So you were saying you had no but that's a serious job.
I had it I had a lot of it in my head.
What does that entail, being a musical director like that of such a big production?
Policeman, basically, just keeping everybody knew what they were supposed to do. It was an amazing band. The first band, the band that played the original run of the show. I didn't play on the Eurovision. Well, it was the orchestra. A couple of guys who ended up in the band were in the orchestra that night. But when we did the first show in the Point, the band was going across the front line was Davy Spillane, Martin O'Connor, Maura Brannock, Kenneth Edge, a guy called Nikola Parov from Hungary, amazing player, and Des Moore playing guitar. On the back line was Desi Reynolds on the kit, Noel Eccles on percussion, and me, and a guy called David Hayes, who was the musical director at that stage. And then when we moved to the States, David didn't go, and the mantle fell to myself and Noel. I think probably because I don't know why, but
He seems to be popular that the bass player is the MD in the band. I know Leonard Cohen's bass player was the MD, and I see it a lot.
Yeah,
it's something to do with the bass's personality.
Maybe you have plenty of time because you have to play so few notes.
Keep them in tow.
Time to listen to the others and see what they're at. I don't know. As far as being like a traditional classic music director would be, I was hopeless at it, because I mean, okay, I'd know if somebody was playing the wrong notes, but I mightn't be able to tell them after, oh no, that's an A, B flat, C, or whatever it is. You should be playing that run instead. That's something really that keyboard players do, in that they can see the score, they see the whole thing, and oh no, it's this, which is why in most of those like shows, like Riverdance was a show as such, and it's mostly the keyboard player. And also the fact is that the keyboard player can take rehearsals on his own, rather than having the whole circus in there and trying to round him out of the pubs and whatever else you have to do. So it was a lot of, I did a lot of police work.
It was a big tour. You toured a lot, though, all over the world. Like,
yeah, once we got going, the first show, the big show, which was the one that had Flatley in it, we toured 47 weeks of the year, in big venues. It was phenomenal. Like, I mean, it was terrific, but like, it was just also, people will say whatever they want to say, but it was fun to play. I mean, Bill, the music is great. There's some of those tunes are very crooked and they don't sound like it, until you actually start trying to play them. My way of playing odd time signatures is I learn the tune.
Yeah, and it just becomes like a normal song.
It just becomes a song, and you just fit your part in and out between it. And it's not, if you start thinking about the time, you're immediately in trouble.
But you won't be grooving anyway.
You won't be grooving, no, you'll be just like counting in your head. It's like, it's something that's, it's kind of like, Vinnie Colaiuta once described something as the anti-groove. And sometimes if you have to really count in your head to stay with the music, it kind of becomes the anti-groove.
Yeah, the best rock bands who have songs in weird time signatures are the ones the musicians don't know anything about time signatures. They just happen.
Yeah, or it's people like what's his name, Dave Matthews. Like, some of those songs are in 7, and Sting songs like 7 days in 5, and it's all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't feel like it, because Sting just wrote a song.
Exactly, yeah.
And it just happened. That's the way it was.
When they over-intellectualize it, then it becomes an exercise in showing off.
Yeah. Is it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, or is it 1, 2, 1, 2, 3? It's that's 5, whichever way you look at it.
But when did the session thing kind of start for you? Was it? I was reading in your bio, it was kind of around the Moving Hearts period.
Yeah,
because I was wondering how the Chris Rea connection started. You did a bunch of albums with him.
I did. Yeah, I did 5 albums for Chris. Another great time, really interesting time, and Moving Hearts finished. I've always been kind of lucky in that I drift from one gig into the next one kind of seamlessly until now. But none of us are drifting into anything at the moment. But I was doing a few sessions, good few sessions, I suppose, when I was playing with Moving Hearts, and did a lot of singers. For some reason or other, singers liked me playing on the records. Maybe because I just kind of didn't take up too much space apart from physically. I was a bigger man then, but so I did a few albums, did 2 or 3 for Mary Black, and I did a couple of others around that time. And then we decided to put Moving Hearts to bed in 1984, I think it was. Yeah, that sounds about right. But so we did one final gig, which I think was called The Last Reel, which was tip the cap to the band. The last waltz. So we decided we'll call it The Last Reel. It'd be great.
It's a good
So
name.
we did the gig anyway, and it's terrific. And it turned out it was part of a thing in Dublin which was called Festival Folk, which for some reason unknown to anybody, Chris Rea had been playing at the night before. He had the hit at the time, I Can Hear Your Heartbeat. And he came to the Moving Hearts gig, and he said to his manager was with him, and he said, I want the fat guy. And I got the call the next day, and I went to London, and we recorded Shamrock Diaries, which was the first album I did with him. And it was a band. It was a great band. I know I keep saying that every band I was in was a great band. It wasn't because I was in it. It was just that they were great players. The keyboard player in the band was a guy called Max Middleton, who is no longer with us. But if you are familiar with Jeff Beck, there's a terrific album by Jeff Beck called Blow by Blow, and Max is the keyboard player on that album. So I was really into that album. We used to play a couple of the tunes from it. Myself and my brother, we had a band, and so it turned out Max was in the band, and I was just blown away. He's fantastic. But we did, we toured a good bit. We did a lot of stuff, some great fun, and I think the most memorable moment of it was we were actually in Berlin the night the wall came down. We were playing the following night. We'd come in a day early for whatever reason, and we had to drive in, or I don't know whether you drove or flew. It was the same feeling anyway. If you drove in, you had to drive through East Germany to get to West Berlin at the time. So it meant you had to drive down what they called the corridor, which was absolutely surrounded by police cars trying to catch people speeding. So the revenue for the East Germans. So we got into Berlin. We had a night off. The following morning, we had 3 days. The following morning, we were told, it's great news. The promoter has organized a special trip for you guys to go through Checkpoint Charlie into East Berlin. And this is great because we've only seen East Berlin in spy movies. So we all went through Checkpoint Charlie into East Berlin, and we were in there walking around, and my greatest memory of it was that it smelled like a giant lawnmower because of all the cars were all two-stroke, those Trabants. And it just smelled like a lawnmower. And I thought, wow, this is weird. So we're in front of the Brandenburg Gate, and Chris is standing there, and he's looking at the wall, and he's looking up the Brandenburg Gate. I knew what was going on. He's looking for the hook line for his song, of course. So I said to him, well, he said, not a sausage. And so we went back, had our dinner, and suddenly the wall was coming down. So we went down. There was another band in Berlin that night called the Christians. And we went down in the Christians' bus, and we sat in their bus drinking beer, watching the people come over the wall.
Mad.
And it was amazing. It was just, people were mad with joy.
Euphoric.
Yeah, it was just brilliant.
You didn't get a chunk of the wall as a souvenir?
No, I wasn't going out there under any circumstances that night.
Did David Hasselhoff performed on the wall that night as well, didn't he?
He did, and that's another story from the same band. We were doing some huge, big TV show in Germany in some sort of a big arena, and he was on it. He was a big star in Germany, the disco thing, and it was all that. But he had this jacket. I hope he doesn't sue me. Yeah, I don't think he will. He had this jacket that used to light up. You know, it was all kind of like a Christmas tree. It used to light up, and so he was singing, giving it all the great. But he had to share a dressing room with the Chris Rea band, which looked like an international darts team at the time. You know, so a lot of us we weren't small, but
Healthy.
we were healthy. Yeah, we had a healthy appetite and a fair thirst. But he came into the dressing room and he called security. He wanted security in there all the time. He thought we were going to steal the jacket, which was like why would any of us who were basically wearing tracksuit bottoms and t-shirts, why would any of us want a jacket
Get laughed
that,
out of
that
Thurles
lit
if you
up?
walked in with it.
So that was the other. I didn't realize he had played on the wall.
He was there that night,
Ah,
yeah.
Yeah, well, that must have been we must have been. That's why we were there for the extra day. But we must have been doing that TV show that afternoon.
There you go.
That's right. There we go. Nicely connected. That'll do. Very good.
And do you remember? It's Christmas. This is going out. And do you remember the session for driving home for Christmas?
No.
Doing that.
I remember a later version that we did. To be honest with you, I'm not sure at this stage which version is played on the radio.
If you're on the one on the radio
or not, but it's the same part.
Yeah.
And it sounds like me, and I get the rap for it.
Well, that's the main thing.
I played it. Actually, you know what? I must have been on it. I can't.
The first version. I
must have been on it because, like, when we played it the second time on an album called "A New Light Through Old Windows," which he called a rehash through bifocals himself, which was a kind of a greatest hits. But we played it again in the middle of the summer, sweltering hot day in the casino in Montreux, and so that was basically that album was. It's actually it's a decent album, and was recorded live. Cool. It was the end of a tour. The band went into the big studio in Montreux, and we just set up as we would have on the stage and just played the gig. And it turned out really well. But it's definitely on that. But driving home for Christmas when it happened.
Do you remember, like, around the time the inception of the song? Obviously, you couldn't know it was going to be such a.
He didn't know. He was thinking of giving up at the time.
Music altogether.
Yeah. He was thinking of going back into the ice cream business.
I heard that rumor that he was.
Oh, he was at the end.
He
was at the end of his wits. He had done loads of records, but it was just kind of, it wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
But out came this thing. Off it went, and suddenly we're doing 6 nights in Wembley at Christmas because the thing is a huge hit, and we did 6 nights, but we were there for 7 nights because the Pogues were booked in the middle of the week to do a gig. So we had to leave the Pogues, have their gig.
Yeah.
So we did 3, then there was the Pogues, and then we did 3 more and went to the Pogues gig. It was absolutely brilliant. It was so good.
Good after session, I'd say.
I know, I didn't go to that. We had to play the next day. But
it
was terrific. They had the set they had was everything was all giant furniture, and there was a giant fridge in one corner of it. And every so often during the gig, Shane would go into the fridge and close the door. The rest is history. I said, God knows, but he was certainly cool. Let's put it that way. But we had this thing. Sorry, this is the last silly story.
Oh no, the stories are good on.
Yeah, we had this giant Santa that used to inflate behind the stage. The rest of the gig was a normal Chris Rea gig, and then bum 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 bum, off we go, and up would inflate Santa behind the stage most nights. But
when he was feeling up to it.
When he was feeling up to it. Yeah. So anyway, it was one of the nights Santa failed. And we couldn't see this because we were all facing forward, as you're supposed to do. And so he got about 2/3 of the way up and went back down again. And suddenly the punters, we take ourselves reasonably seriously, and the punters are all falling around laughing. It's like 7,000 of them falling around laughing, and they make a racket when they do that. And suddenly somebody said, kind of pointed out, and here was Santa at the back of the stage, like in definitely reduced circumstances. So that was grand. But we had this other thing as well. This is the end of the story. We used to throw out these Santas, which were big. They were 8 feet, 8 feet tall, and like big inflatable things out into the audience. And they'd, like balloons, they'd bounce them around during the song. It's great, fantastic. And yeah, we'll get them back, it'll be fine. It never came back.
Of course
Like,
not.
we were going out into the bus after the gig one night, and there was 2 guys cycling down on a bicycle, going down along Fulham Palace Road or wherever they were going down along, with one of these Santas on their shoulders. It was stupid, but it was great.
Yeah, you liked the touring then from the stories you're telling. You enjoy the lifestyle of being on the road, like it is, even though it's hard physically. It is hard.
It isn't really. People
Depends
always,
how much you look after
people
yourself.
always say that, it's a terrible, tough life. Yeah, I think for most of my life on the road, I didn't have any real connections at home. I wasn't married. So I got left wherever I was living, got on the plane, and off I went. And I did that for a long time, and it was fine. So it was very easy for me. And then suddenly I was married, and it's become slightly different, because you're thinking not so much of the fact that you're going away, but you're thinking of the people that you're leaving behind.
Yeah.
And, will they be okay? And of course they'd be okay. They'd be much better off in most cases. But that kind of comes into your head, and then it becomes more difficult to go. But the thing is, once you're gone and 2 or 3 days into the tour, then you're back in that mode, because that's what you've always done.
You're in that world.
It's a different world. It's an enclosed world,
and time moves very fast because you never really stop.
If you're doing enough gigs.
Yeah, if you're doing
I always felt that, like, one of the shows, a Celtic Woman show that I did for 13 years, was, I think we played about 7 months of the year, 4 of it in the States, always the start of the year. And the day off became the enemy, because invariably you would end up in somewhere like Toledo, Ohio, or something like that. Sounds great. Or Amarillo, Texas, which are 2 absolutely lovely places. But it's like, suddenly, how are you going to put down a day in Toledo in the middle of February? It's like,
and you're Irish without getting in trouble.
Without getting in trouble. And there's only one bar called Mac's that you can go to. And Mac was a bass player or a drummer, I'm not sure. But it was a jazz bar, and it was great fun. But if that wasn't there, you'd be sunk. But you very rarely got a day off in the big cities. You have a day off somewhere nice.
That's it. You never get the day off the place you want to go and explore.
The place you want to go, yeah. It used to happen to us with Riverdance, because in the early days, we'd be like 5 weeks in Radio City. So once the show was up, then every day is a day off, really, until 7 o'clock, which is the show call. And you could have New York well explored in 5 weeks. And it was the same in some of the other big cities. And that was great and very enjoyable the first time around.
Yeah. But touring has changed over the years as well. Like, the margins get smaller, so
people can't tour anymore. I don't know. There was, when we toured Riverdance, we always flew because the company was too big, and so we'd fly between the venues. But with Celtic Woman, we had 4 buses, and it was 4 sleeper buses, and okay, we'd get hotels, but we still have the buses, and that was the best way to do it, because we were doing mostly single one-night stands, and we do maybe 6 shows a week, which would be 2 probably on a Saturday. But it was, once you got into the routine of it, it was fine. Like, the biggest thing that could go wrong was the catering was bad, and the rest of it is just, yourself. The rest of it is just routine.
So myself, Jeff, who's helping today, we're still in the 3 lads in a van stage. So,
but it's the same thing.
It is the same.
It's just that you don't have all the paraphernalia. Like, I mean, we guys joining the tour, have done the tour for 10 years before, you'd get someone new would come in into the choir usually and be, lads, what's the story with the coolers in the bus, the beer in the coolers? Beer in the coolers. Is it free? And I say, of course it's free. It's our bus. That's our beer. You drink it. And then they drink it all. And the sound check isn't great the next day. But the novelty wears off that after a while too. Like free beer is free beer.
Yeah. We always get it when we're on tour in Spain. That's before they even say hello to you. They have cervezas out for everyone.
Very good. Spain is a great place to tour.
They love music there. They really do.
Yeah, they do.
Brilliant place.
We did a lot of shows up in Galicia with Moving Hearts.
We like that beer, Galicia and Estrella Galicia.
That's good stuff. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah.
Right, we're back. We took 5 there to get a glass of water.
Yeah, and this is it. All right.
Owen said he wanted to try out his first proper bass he ever bought. I suppose it sounds class.
Be part of McBride's Moving Hearts.
It sounds great. Love it.
Yeah, that's actually that's actually an A part. It's not a B part, really.
Your slap technique's very tidy. You don't go out with big, huge slaps. You kind of keep it tight to the bass.
I am very greedy with it, chef. I don't wear out the strings.
So, what are you? Any projects you're on at the moment? I think we were discussing on the phone. You say you're always writing. You like to be doing.
We're doing bits and pieces. I have been doing stuff with Mick Hanley, not writing, but playing on Mick's songs. And for the last few years, we've hooked up again and it's great. And we do it in Gaff Studios. But we also have a project going ourselves, which is with 3 other musicians. There's only 4 of us in the band. And the guy, Joe Gallagher, who owns Gaff Studios, is also a partner in the venture. And we've been recording Irish music, basically, which doesn't really feel like Irish music as such. They are tunes because the band is Kieran Tourish, who's a fiddle player who played for many years with Altan, and James Delaney on keyboards, and a drummer called Kevin Malone. And we've been putting a slightly different slant on maybe some familiar tunes, some tunes not so familiar. But it's, I think it's interesting. And in the next, hopefully, if we ever get to meet up and take a photo together, as the 3 guys live in Dublin, so it will appear on a website at some stage. And I think we're going to call the band Jex Grove. No, we don't know why, but that's why we're going to call it anyway. So yeah, if so fancy looking out for that. I think it's interesting in that it's not the way that people kind of see traditional music, in that it's not Moving Hearts. It's kind of, maybe we'll have similarities. Well, it'll have to have, I suppose, because I'm in it and I only know one way to play, and it's going to be that way. But it's not like the normal. A lot of the modern trad bands. Now, this is not a judgment or anything, but I feel a lot of people play some of the music, not all of it, but play some of the music too fast. And it's like, I think because the guys are just too good, they just have stunning technique. And we've kind of deliberately tried to play the music too slow. And it's
Put it back.
it has kind of come out in an interesting way.
Mm.
And we've had fun doing it. It's a labor of love. We've been doing it for over a year now. And I think we have about 42 minutes or 8 pieces of music ready to go. So we're hoping that if we're allowed to meet up and get stuff done, that we might try and put it up online or something and
Cool.
see if people like it.
Sounds good. As any kind of interesting bass parts on it? Are you doing any of this slap or kind of lead parts? Or
No, it's mostly big grooves,
Mm.
and it really works. Not the bass. I really don't think about the bass. I just do what I'm going to do.
what fits the song, kind of?
And but what it is there's only 4 of us. We treat the fiddle as if it's a voice. So its position in the mix is where the voice would be.
Yeah.
It's not like part of a rattling along with a trad band. So some people will think it's too loud. But because there's only 3 of us, mind you, I tell a lie. We did have Anto Drennan in as well, who played across all the tracks, and we took some bits and pieces that he left us too much stuff, and we took bits of it, and he's there. But basically, there are very few overdubs. That is just the 4 of us playing in a room together, which is what I really love. And I think we were talking about it earlier, and it's why I started playing music in the first place. And it's something I really miss now, because one, we're not allowed to do it because of this unfortunate restrictions of COVID and stuff. But that'll pass too, and I'm positive about that as well. And but I really missed over the number of years gone by. Like, music has changed. The recording of music, I think, has changed. When I started playing first, there was nothing other than whatever the band was, be it 5 or be it 6, that could be accommodated by whatever studio you were playing in, all together in the room playing. It was a different kind of pressure, in that it really mattered if you made a mess of a track, if you made a mistake. It really mattered, because, okay, the very good engineers in the big studio, maybe you could drop in. But the fact that you're all playing in the room together probably means that you're spilling onto everybody else.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a problem. But it was a type of pressure which, in some ways, has kind of gone away from recording, because now with modern stuff, with Pro Tools and whatever else, I mean, the pressure to get it right the first time is not exactly there anymore, because it's always a question of, yeah, that's great. Yeah, you put your hand up and say, listen, I did a bit of something there.
I think
And
you lose something though when you punch in too much. Like if you get it's nicer to get as much of a full take as you can. Like.
it's absolutely, I think it's vital. And in some ways, again, you can still do it. You can still, I know, done tracks recently, or where actually you will play this thing, it feels great, but it's kind of a bit all over the place because everyone is still learning the song, and but somebody's, like, usually, hopefully, the drums. The drums are absolutely it. That's it. They're nailed. You can then drop onto the drums.
Yeah.
And it'll still feel better.
Have the energy from that take.
From the take, because you will still remember what it felt like to play it. Well, you should. And it's kind of, even if you replace everything except the drums, it'll still sound better than starting with the sequencer.
Yeah.
And sequencing everything, or people turning up on different days, which happens quite a lot now. A lot of the work I've done, not that I've done a whole lot in the last few years, has been like that, where I get a call, go to the studio, and it's just me and the engineer, and
Mhm.
maybe if there's a producer, the producer, and you go in and you play on what's there. So it means that you kind of have no input into the creative side
Yeah.
of the music. So it kind of doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't really matter unless people are looking for something specific that only you can do.
Mm.
And like these days, there's very little that everybody,
Yeah.
it's people are very good now. Players are better,
Yeah.
so they're all able to play like everything. And but if you're in the room with five guys and a guy comes in with a song and you've maybe never seen him before, and he's a song and you make out whatever chart you were able to follow. And sometimes it's very funny if you have five guys inside in the studio and no one is reading music, and to compare five people's charts, that just won't make any sense.
Yes,
It's all
just
what people,
chicken scratches.
but
That
yeah,
makes
what
sense to
people
them.
write down that makes sense to them,
Yeah.
and it's like, but I think it's a feel that you kind of can't recreate it.
Mm.
It's, I don't know, like people tell you, oh yeah, well you can program in this into the drums, it'll make them feel lazier. You set the snare off 2 frames,
Yeah.
so the snare will feel lazier, and yeah, it will, but it'll feel lazy in exactly the same place every
Yeah.
time.
It's just not real. Like.
Yeah, it won't do that lovely thing that I remember thinking one time. It's another of these crazy ideas that I have, that American bands will slow down going into the chorus for some reason or other, just marginally,
Mm.
because it makes it feel bigger
Yeah.
when it's just it suddenly gets more relaxed. Whereas we've always tended to speed up going into the chorus because you get excited,
Mm.
and but apparently Irish players do it as well. Because last year, the year before, I played at Glastonbury with somebody, and it was a guy from Marty Pello, Wet Wet Wet. He was on the same. We were in the tent,
Mm.
and he was on the same day, and they were listening to us. And he's Scottish, and but he was able to tell the sound guy that it was an Irish rhythm section.
Really?
Yeah,
Never heard this before now.
neither did I. But for some reason or another, it maybe it's to do with the traditional music or
Mm.
something. But he said, and also of course he's Scottish, so maybe. But it was he seemed to think he was able, and he was right. Of course, it was an Irish rhythm section,
Yeah.
but we thought we were speeding up. And
But you're more like the Americans.
I mean,
in your approach.
the older we get, the slower we speed up.
That Glastonbury's a tough slog of a festival to play as well as
Yeah.
it getting around.
It's pretty difficult. I hadn't been there for a long time. We were there. I think we played there with Moving Hearts at some stage. One of those days that I can't remember much about. But we played on what's the thing called?
The
The pyramid.
pyramid, yeah.
We played up there. Something like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something.
Yeah, it's okay to disappear into the night as long as the gig is over.
Pouring rain, and it was it was okay, but like I was there last year maybe, and I was horrified at the size of it.
It's scary, yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, wow.
When I was there, I met one of the farmers who rents out the land. He was
That's right. They have
it's 1,000 acres or more even.
Yeah, they're thrilled with it.
Yeah, he actually had a stick, and he had 40 wristbands on every year on
very
the
good.
stick.
Yeah,
He was very proud of that.
yeah. It's certainly, and it'll probably be going for another 40 years now. I don't know whether they'll do. They probably won't be able to do it this year.
Probably not. No, I think it'll keep going because the big name acts usually cut their fee because they want to play Glastonbury.
Yeah, that's right.
So for the rest of this year, your own, you've got Moving Hearts are still you're back together anyway.
Yeah, we hope to play. We're not going to play very much. We play as much as we can, or as much as we're asked to. Really, it's a very big band. There's, I don't know, it's 12 or 13 of us in the band at this stage, and but it's something we all really enjoy. And once it gets up ahead of steam, it's a terrific kind of it's a terrific thing to be caught up in. And that's basically the only way I can describe it, because it has such a head of steam that
Yeah.
you're caught up in it.
You're bigger than the sum of your parts. If you get
Well,
together.
yeah, we hope. But yeah, we were supposed to play a few shows this summer in the concert hall, which we did the year last year, I suppose, and they were really nice. We enjoyed it, and we said we'd do a couple more this summer, and of course, COVID intervened, so there were no gigs in the concert hall. But at the moment, I think we're penciled in for August 2021. So we hope,
Hopefully it'll go ahead.
hopefully, yeah, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll all still be alive, which is to enjoy it.
And are there any bass players at the moment you're listening to, or is it you're still listening to like some of your favorites, like Anthony Jackson and
I'm listening to what I always listen to. It's like, um, to be honest, I don't listen to a lot of music,
Mm.
which is a pity. I wish I had like a little bit more drive to listen to music. Uh, I know very little about what's happening currently
in the bass world or
in
music world?
in any world,
Mm.
really, I suppose. But yeah, in the music world, uh, I kind of lost faith in the music. I suppose when you're on the road for 23 years, which I was between Riverdance and Celtic Women, uh, you don't have time to listen to music. So suddenly you go from being the guy that's in the music to being the grandfather of the guys who are now in the music, and it's like kind of, oh yeah, it's like the bands that are now kind of people I see on TV. I actually, and this is my fault, not theirs, I actually don't know who they are. I don't know the players. Like, I don't know. I only know people of my own generation, if you
Yeah.
like, and maybe the next generation. Like, as far as, say, Irish players, bass players, and stuff are concerned, like people of my generation, there aren't a whole lot of us left. But like, say, people like Paul Moore, Keith Duffy, those people, I would always see them as the next generation. But now there's another generation after those who are fantastic players. And I actually don't really know them at all unless I come across them through something like this, like we're doing here, or someone gets in touch with me and says, can I come down, and I'm thinking of buying one of those MTDs. Can I come and have a look at it? And usually that turns into a very pleasant day where we take out a lot of instruments and we have fun with them, which unfortunately we're not allowed to do now.
No.
Which is a pity. But,
yeah, you have a class collection anyway.
But there's a lot of more zany stuff than those. But we'll leave it for another day.
Yeah, I'm going to come back, I'd say, and take pictures of all your basses if you want. That'd be cool.
You could do, yeah.
Get some nice pictures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, sure. It was. Well, I'm delighted you came on. Appreciate it. This is my first ever in-person interview.
Well, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Do you want to play a little bit for us out? That'd be class.
What would I play?
Anything you want. The Stingray sounded great.
It does sound great, but I can't remember how to play it. That slap thing is should be easier than that.
Well, thanks again. You're great. Great to have you on.
That's how it goes. Yeah. Actually, someone that I used to play with one time, who shall remain nameless, but her initials are Flo McSweeney, who still to this day we occasionally speak. But Flo thought that when I did this, the reason that the tone changed is that I was fanning the strings with my hand, which I'm actually not. I'm bending
the neck.
the neck. But it just...
You should have played into that.
Kind of looks like that.
Told her that is how it works.
She still thinks to this day. No. Not true. Not true. Anyway, that's nearly libelous, that. Right.
Nice. No, sounds great.
I love that.
Yeah, you probably haven't picked it up for ages now. You're
no,
remembering.
I haven't played it. I haven't played it for, I'd say, over a year. I'm delighted at how good the strings are. Yeah.
Some sustain on it.
Oh yeah, it just keeps going. And this is the difference. This is why when I got this, all the other basses paled into insignificance. Yeah. One, because of the, like, yeah, okay. No, that's pretty much full up everything, like the bass and on the top end. So that's that Music Man sizzle that they say. But in reality, I wouldn't use that much of it. I'd use more of that. Just a little bit less sizzle makes it a little bit funkier.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, it's a nice old thing. I think I'll leave it out now.
Give it a bit
give it a bit of air.